I didn't cry when my supervisor deleted a year of my work in front of the entire department. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't even blink. Because 30 seconds later, my phone rang. And by the time I hung up, I knew this wasn't going to be the end of my career. It was going to be the beginning of hers. The beginning of the end. Hi, my name is Elena Faywright. And until 6 weeks ago, I was a senior client strategist for a boutique consulting firm in San Diego. We worked with high-growth tech startups and early-stage companies trying to scale quickly. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, but I was good. I had a system. One that took me years to perfect. Relationship tracking, retention metrics, private conversations, trust loops. I built a silent machine behind our entire department's success. It wasn't always visible on paper. But my clients stayed. Our retention rates crushed the industry standard. And the people I worked with? They called me when their babies were born. Invited me to their weddings. They trusted me. Which, in corporate America, is like gold. But apparently, it wasn't enough. Because one Monday morning in April, everything I'd built came crashing down, with a single click. Her name was Corinne. Corinne Maddox. My direct supervisor, department head, and the woman whose entire sense of self-worth seemed to revolve around control. Blonde, always dressed in black, coffee orders that changed with the lunar cycle, and a smile that never reached her eyes. We weren't enemies. But we weren't friends, either. Corinne liked to keep people guessing. Over the course of that year, I'd noticed her becoming increasingly threatened. I'd started being left off email threads. Important meetings happened without me. Clients I'd nurtured were reassigned for efficiency. She said it was a new departmental model. I knew it was sabotage. But I stayed silent. I documented everything. Until the day she made it public. It was a Tuesday team sync, the kind of meeting where you fake smile through 30 PowerPoint slides while sipping lukewarm coffee and pretending to be impressed by pie charts. We were all standing in the main conference room. 23 people, one projector, and the kind of forced corporate enthusiasm that makes your skin itch. Corinne stood near the front with a pointer in one hand and her laptop balanced on the table beside her. She was talking about efficiency metrics and client loyalty leakage. Then, she turned to me. Elena, can you show us the retention flow charts you've been working on this year? I nodded. Sure, they're on my local drive. Give me 1 second. I connected my laptop to the screen. Clicked open the folder labeled Client Retention Architecture, Q3 Sync. Over 50 subfiles. A full year of research, spreadsheets, call logs, and strategic recommendations. It was more than a project. It was proof of everything I'd built. Corinne walked over. She looked at the screen. Then she said, loudly and clearly, "This is garbage." And she hit delete. There was a sharp intake of breath from somewhere behind me. A coffee cup clattered to the floor. I stared at the screen. The files were gone. Every folder. Every dataset. Every recorded client call. Just gone. I looked up at her, stunned. "Corinne, what are you doing?" She smiled, the kind that's all teeth and no warmth. "You're going to start over. From scratch. With proper oversight this time. This isn't about you, Elena. It's about doing what's best for the department." No one said anything. Nobody stood up for me. I felt my face burn with humiliation, but I refused to let the tears come. She wanted a reaction. She wanted me to break. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. What she didn't know was that I never saved the real files on my work drive. I knew better. Every project, every file, every call log was backed up on an encrypted private cloud under a pseudonym. Because I'd seen people like Corinne before. I'd worked too hard to lose it all over someone else's ego. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I quietly walked out of the conference room, went back to my desk, and watched the eyes of my coworkers trail after me, some with guilt, some with fear, none with courage. I powered off my laptop. And that's when it happened. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I thought it might be my mom, or worse, Corinne calling to follow up. But the caller ID said, Undisclosed, Outbound Connect. I answered. "Hi, is this Elena Faywright?" "Yes." "This is Mark Kendall from DeVix Partners." We met briefly at the Celerate Forum last November. I was on the M&A panel. Oh yes. I remember. He chuckled. You left quite the impression on our team. One of your former clients, Leo Tran at Embra, just called and said something about your supervisor deleting your work. I froze. Yes. That's accurate. He didn't skip a beat. Well, I'm calling because we've been looking for a director-level strategist to oversee our West Coast division. Full autonomy. Flexible structure. Salary starting at $485,000 with performance bonuses. We think you'd be perfect. Interested in talking. I nearly dropped my phone. Corinne had tried to erase me in front of 23 people, and in doing so, had unknowingly alerted half the industry. Because Leo, the client she reassigned last month, he hadn't gone quietly. He'd called DeVix. And DeVix had called everyone else. I wasn't just remembered. I was in demand. Suddenly, I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating. Because the offer from DeVix wasn't just a lifeline. It was leverage. Leverage I could use to do something far more elegant than quitting with a rant or setting fire to the company's Slack channel. No. This was going to be a takedown Corinne never saw coming. When someone tries to erase you in public, don't erase them back. Just hand them a spotlight. And let them walk into it blind. That's exactly what I planned to do to Corinne Maddox. Because after she deleted my year's work in front of 24 colleagues, and then waltzed out of the conference room like she'd done something brave, she assumed I'd sulk. Maybe file a complaint. Maybe quit. She had no idea that within 30 minutes, I had options. Big ones. The call from DeVix Partners changed everything. Not just because of the offer, which was already more than I'd ever made in my life, but because of what it represented. Recognition. Respect. Leverage. And most importantly, a network that extended well beyond Corinne's little kingdom. Because the second I hung up, I had 5 LinkedIn messages waiting. One from a startup incubator I'd consulted with in 2023. 2 from clients Corinne thought she'd reassigned. 1 from a competing firm. And 1 from Victor Hale, VP of Strategy at Gossamer Ridge, a competitor Corinne used to intern for. Apparently, the news had spread fast. My deletion wasn't a secret. It was a rallying cry. Still, I didn't quit. Not yet. If I'd left that day, she would have controlled the narrative. Told HR I couldn't take feedback. That I was too emotional. That I chose to walk. I needed something cleaner. Something permanent. So I stayed. For 4 weeks. And while Corinne thought I was rebuilding my garbage work from scratch, I was doing something else entirely. Building a trap. The first step was subtle. I started agreeing with her. Enthusiastically. Every bad idea? Absolutely, Corinne. Let's pilot it. Every insult she lobbed during team syncs? Great feedback. I'll incorporate that. I let her think she'd broken me. And slowly, she began to let her guard down. Corinne had always wanted one thing above all else: recognition. She wasn't just a micromanager, she was a spotlight addict. She wanted praise, promotions, visibility. She was the kind of person who introduced herself with her job title and LinkedIn headline. So I gave her exactly what she wanted. I told her she should present at the next West Coast Consulting Summit, an event attended by senior execs, media outlets, and all our competitors. She was thrilled. But I haven't built a new case study yet, she said. I smiled. What if we presented my client retention metrics as a department-wide success? I can stay off stage, you take full credit. If leadership sees you as the architect, it'll help your promotion case. She blinked. You'd do that? Of course. I just want to help. She took the bait. Hook. Line. Ego. Over the next 3 weeks, I fed her every insight I had. The retention models I'd built. The language I'd used. The formulas behind our client loyalty scores. She didn't even ask where it came from. She was too busy practicing her speech. And while she rehearsed, I worked with Gossamer Ridge behind the scenes. They didn't just want to hire me, they wanted to poach. So we made a deal. On the day of the summit, Gossamer Ridge would announce my hiring publicly, during their panel, before Corinne took the stage. The kicker? I would walk on stage with them, right as she started her talk. The morning of the summit, I showed up at the Hilton Grand Ballroom in a navy blue pantsuit, credentials around my neck, and calm in my chest. Corinne didn't recognize me at first. She was too busy pacing near the green room, flipping through her note cards. Elena, there you are. Did you finish prepping the data deck? I smiled. All loaded on your flash drive. She winked. You're the best. Oh, Corinne. No. I'm just patient. The summit kicked off with Gossamer Ridge's keynote. Victor Hale took the stage and opened with a smile. Before we dive into predictive loyalty modeling, I'd like to welcome the newest member of our executive strategy team, Elena Faywright, formerly of Company Name Redacted. The room turned. Cameras clicked. Heads swiveled. And I walked onto the stage, waved, smiled, and took my seat next to the competitor. 3 rows behind me, I saw Corinne's face. Pale, wide-eyed, her mouth forming a small, stunned O. But she couldn't leave. She was next. And her entire talk, the one she stole from me, was now useless. Because I just joined the team that invented the metrics she was about to pretend she created. What followed was beautiful. Corinne took the stage 15 minutes later. Her opening line? Today, I'd like to share our department's success in client loyalty modeling, led by. She faltered. Her eyes flicked to me. I raised an eyebrow. Victor leaned over and whispered to his colleague. A few execs from other companies stood up and walked out. Her voice cracked. She fumbled through a few slides. Then the screen glitched. The flash drive froze mid-slide. She stared at it. Tapped the remote. Nothing. A soft, digital error chime echoed through the ballroom. And the screen displayed. Source file not found, Faywright cloud. I had encrypted the entire deck. That's when she snapped. Corinne dropped the clicker, muttered "excuse me," and ran off stage. The event coordinators rushed to fill the gap. I didn't move. Just smiled. Because the people who followed me out of that company, the clients, the competitors, even the interns, they weren't loyal to a job title. They were loyal to truth. To relationships. To people who actually do the work. Corinne never understood that. She thought deleting my files would make me disappear. But all it did was show the world who really built the system. When someone wrongs you professionally, your first instinct might be to cut ties. Mine wasn't. I let the ties stay. Because ties can strangle. And when the same company that tried to humiliate me came crawling back, begging for a second chance, I didn't slam the door. I opened it. And let them walk straight into their own trap. It started just 3 days after the West Coast Consulting Summit. Corinne's meltdown at the podium had gone semi-viral. Someone in the audience had posted a blurry video on LinkedIn with the caption, "When you steal your employee's work, but forget she built the encryption." The post had over 40,000 reactions by morning. The hashtags? Hashtag workplace karma. Hashtag Faywright files. Hashtag strategic revenge. Corinne was put on temporary leave by end of day. HR called it a wellness sabbatical. But we all knew it was fallout control. Her ego didn't take the hit well. Apparently, neither did the company. Because on Monday morning, as I was sipping coffee in the sleek, sunlit Gossamer Ridge office, I got an email. Subject line. Opportunity to discuss strategic realignment. Translation? Please come back. The message came from Amanda Lynn, the VP of Talent Development at my former company. Amanda was decent. Cold, but strategic. She was known for being ruthlessly efficient, but never unnecessarily cruel. Unlike Corinne, her email was professional, polished, and desperate beneath the surface. She wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss reintegrating high-value contributors who recently transitioned away. Which was corporate speak for, "You embarrassed us and now we're bleeding clients." I didn't respond right away. I forwarded the email to Victor Hale, my new boss, and asked his thoughts. He replied with just 3 words. Leverage it smart. So I did. I agreed to meet Amanda over coffee at a neutral spot, an upscale cafe halfway between our offices. I wore muted gray. No statement jewelry. Hair pulled back tight. Calm, respectful, forgettable. Let her think I was softening. Amanda was already seated when I arrived. She smiled with the kind of precision you only get from HR training seminars and expensive veneers. "Elena," she said, standing to shake my hand. "You look well." "I am, thank you." "Shall we get started?" She began by apologizing, vaguely. She acknowledged there had been tension in my department. That certain leadership styles hadn't meshed well with evolving workplace dynamics. That mistakes had been made. But then came the pitch. They wanted to offer me my old title back, with a significant compensation package and enhanced autonomy. They hoped I'd lead a new client trust initiative, one that mirrored some of the models I'd inspired. I sipped my coffee and let her talk. When she finally stopped, I smiled and laid out my conditions. First, I made it clear, I wasn't interested in a lateral move. I'd already proven my value. Publicly. If they wanted me back, it would be on my terms, as Director of Client Strategy, reporting only to the COO. With a salary that matched Gossamer Ridge's offer, plus a 15% signing bonus. Second, I wanted my own team. No reassigned loyalty managers. I would build it from scratch. Vet every hire myself. And third, Corinne Maddox would not be anywhere near me. Not in the building. Not on calls. Not CC'd on emails. She would need to be formally removed from any oversight or proximity to client strategy, permanently. Amanda's expression didn't change, but her fingers clenched slightly around her mug. "I'll need to take that back to leadership," she said. "I know," I replied. "I'll give you 48 hours. After that, the offer expires." 46 hours later, I got the call. They agreed. Almost. Corinne wasn't fired. Not officially. But she was restructured into a non-strategic operations role, working off-site, focusing on internal process design. Which basically meant she'd be buried in Excel spreadsheets and never allowed near clients again. As for me, I walked back into the building I was humiliated in, with my head high and my new title etched on the glass door to my office. Director of Client Strategy. 6-figure salary. Team of my choosing. And a reputation that had only grown stronger in my absence. But I wasn't there for revenge alone. I had a new mission. In my first month back, I handpicked a team of brilliant, overlooked women. Analysts and managers who'd been passed up for years because they didn't play the politics game. People like me, quiet builders. We created a new client model from the ground up. Transparent. Personalized. Predictive. And within 2 months, we'd recovered over $4 million in lost contracts. Leadership sent champagne. I sent thank you notes to every former client who stood by me. As for Corinne, she was eventually let go quietly, after failing to meet a string of process improvement KPIs. No public meltdown. No final monologue. Just silence. The kind you reserve for ghosts. Sometimes, revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's the sound of your keycard unlocking a door they told you you'd never walk through again. Sometimes it's the look on your former boss's face when she has to walk past your name on the org chart and pretend it doesn't burn. And sometimes, it's watching the people who once stood by and said nothing start looking to you for leadership. Because now, you have the power. And this time, you know exactly what to do with it. I thought I'd erased Corinne Maddox from my life. She'd been restructured out of client strategy. Officially off-site. Quietly phased out of internal comms. No more surprise meetings, no more condescending emails, no more deleting my work while the room watched. But people like Corinne? They don't disappear. They lurk. They scheme. And sometimes, they watch. It started with a calendar glitch. One of my team members, Marcy, my senior retention analyst, flagged it. "Hey Elena, did you add someone named CM to our Tuesday sync?" I frowned. No. Our team calendar's locked. She turned her screen toward me. And there it was. An anonymous viewer, Ceda Maddox had accessed 3 private team invites that hadn't been shared outside our department. My skin went cold. Corinne didn't have clearance anymore. Her company email had been migrated to a different system, and technically, she shouldn't have even been able to see the new team architecture. But she had. Which meant only one thing. She never let go. I didn't report her. Not yet. Reporting Corinne would create noise. HR audits. Leadership meetings. All of which would give her the one thing she craved most. Attention. No. If she wanted to watch, then I'd give her something to watch. Over the next few weeks, I fed my calendar strategic breadcrumbs. I listed fake meetings. Pilot client review, confidential. West Coast retention hack session. Tier 1 exit threat model. None of them were real. But all of them sounded dangerous enough to pique a certain former supervisor's curiosity. And she took the bait. I watched anonymous calendar views spike the day before each meeting. She was following me. Obsessively. So I took it a step further. I created a decoy deck. A beautifully designed, detail-packed presentation titled, Operation Alpha Exodus. It outlined a fictional plan to gradually poach key clients and pivot them to Gossamer Ridge, using loyalty vulnerabilities mapped out from internal audits. I made it look damning. Sloppy. Arrogant. Just enough to tempt someone like Corinne to act. Then I placed it in a shared folder titled Private Draft, for Elena only. 2 days later, I got a call from Victor Hale. Elena, did you send us a deck called Alpha Exodus? My heart skipped. What? He laughed. One of our clients just forwarded it to us. Said someone emailed them anonymously, claiming it proved we were stealing accounts. I blinked. Corinne. Thought so, Victor said. Want me to escalate? No, I said. Let me handle it. The trap was working. Corinne had taken the bait and forwarded the fake plan to a client I'd referenced in the deck. She thought she was exposing me. Instead, she'd committed 2 very real offenses. Accessing a secured internal document post-removal. Attempting to undermine an active executive by spreading manipulated materials to clients. It was everything I needed. So I called Amanda Lynn. The meeting was short. I forwarded the tracking logs, the access history, the fake timestamps, and the client email chain showing the anonymous leak. Amanda didn't even try to defend Corinne this time. Elena, thank you. We'll handle it from here. Within 24 hours, Corinne's LinkedIn profile changed to independent consultant. Within 48, her company credentials were revoked permanently. By the end of the week, someone in our legal department quietly whispered that she'd signed a resignation letter tied to a confidentiality breach. No fanfare. No goodbye email. Just, deleted. But I wasn't done. Because the way Corinne watched me wasn't just about control. It was about ego. So I gave her a final show. 3 weeks later, I was invited to speak at the National Future of Work Symposium, a panel that highlighted rising leaders in client strategy and employee empowerment. I almost declined. But then I thought of Corinne. Sitting alone in her apartment, refreshing job boards, maybe still stalking her old team on LinkedIn, watching from a burner account. And I said yes. The night of the event, I wore white. Not to stand out, but to stand clean. Clear. Untouched. The room was full. Senior execs. Industry media. Even Amanda was in the audience, notebook in hand. And as I walked on stage and saw the lights reflect off the camera lenses in the crowd, I realized something. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt free. My speech wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about Corinne. It was about what happens when companies stop protecting politics and start investing in people. I talked about trust loops. About psychological safety. About how retention isn't about flashy perks, it's about quiet respect. When I stepped down, the applause didn't roar. It resonated. And that night, my inbox exploded. Job offers. Book requests. Podcast invites. One TV producer. Corinne had watched me get deleted. Now the whole world was watching me rise. You'd think after being caught snooping, leaking fake data, and signing a quiet resignation, Corinne Maddox would finally disappear. She didn't. Because people like Corinne never leave quietly. They just migrate, to new titles, new cities, new victims. And in her mind? She was the victim. The misunderstood leader. The one punished for being too direct. the scapegoat of a jealous subordinate's success. So it didn't surprise me when her name popped up again, on a completely different company roster. What did surprise me was that the company was one of our clients. It started with a subtle change in tone. Everlight Biosystems had been one of our most stable consulting clients, quiet, efficient, and deeply loyal. I'd helped them redesign their post-acquisition client onboarding 3 quarters ago, and the results had been stellar. Then the tone of their messages shifted. They were colder, terse, suddenly requesting itemized breakdowns of every initiative we'd implemented. Legal language crept in: performance metrics, scope of engagement, discretionary outcomes. I flagged it with Victor. He raised an eyebrow. Strange. You think they're shopping around? Not sure yet, I said. But something's changed. Someone's changed. I requested a new point of contact. 3 days later, I got a reply. Your new liaison will be Corinne Maddox, Director of Strategic Operations. I actually laughed out loud. She had landed at Everlight. The same client whose loyalty structure I'd rebuilt. The same firm I'd just been prepping for long-term exclusivity. Corinne hadn't just found a new job. She'd walked right back into my domain. And I wasn't going to block her. I was going to show her exactly how powerless she now was. Step 1. Make her feel safe. I sent her a warm, professional welcome email. Hi Corinne, excited to reconnect in a new context. Looking forward to supporting your success at Everlight. She replied with a 1-line message. Likewise. Hope we can keep things productive this time. Cute. I let her lead the next 2 meetings. She asked questions she didn't understand, tried to critique systems I'd built, and requested clarity documents that already existed. She was clearly trying to assert dominance, to prove to Everlight that I'd been the problem all along. So I let her run with it. Then I triggered step 2. We invited Everlight to a joint innovation workshop. Standard strategy event. 2-day retreat. Cross-collaboration between consulting firm and client execs. Usually happens once a year. But this year, I made it personal. I booked the venue at a sleek corporate estate overlooking the Pacific. I curated a case study presentation that subtly mirrored the system Corinne had tried to dismantle at our old company. Same frameworks. Same terminology. Except this time, it was bulletproof. I presented side by side with Victor. My name was printed on every folder. My model? Already published in a peer-reviewed industry paper. Corinne was seated in the second row. I didn't look at her once. During lunch, Everlight's CEO pulled me aside. Did you work with Corinne before this? Yes, I said, smiling politely. She says you tried to sabotage her at your last firm. I raised an eyebrow. That's a generous interpretation of what happened. But feel free to ask around. He nodded, amused. I already did. Apparently, Victor had already spoken to 2 other Everlight board members, and sent over the LinkedIn viral video of Corinne's public meltdown. The one where she deleted my files and then had the screen crash mid-speech. They knew. And she didn't know that they knew. The next morning, I watched it all unravel. Corinne came in today too, visibly shaken. She sat stiffly. Asked no questions. Barely spoke. By the afternoon, Everlight's leadership had quietly excused her from the remaining sessions. Officially, she was needed back at HQ. Unofficially, she'd been cut out. Again. A week later, I received an email from a recruiter. Subject: Maddox application inquiry, reference request. Apparently, Corinne was trying to leave Everlight. Again. And someone had listed me as a professional connection. It was almost funny. This woman had spent over a year trying to erase me, and now she wanted me to help her escape the fallout she caused. I replied professionally. Corinne and I have worked together on multiple teams. I recommend verifying her credentials independently and conducting in-depth performance reference checks from multiple levels of the organization. That was it. No lies. No slander. Just truth, wrapped in caution. The last I heard, Corinne started offering freelance coaching sessions online. Her tagline? Helping women rebuild their careers after workplace injustice. Ironic. She never did learn the difference between being a victim and being held accountable. As for me, I'm still with Gossamer Ridge. I've spoken on 6 panels, published 2 frameworks, mentored 4 women into executive promotions. And just last week, I was nominated for the Strategic Leadership Impact Award by the National Client Development Council. All because one supervisor deleted my work in front of a room full of people. And in doing so, she made sure the world finally saw it. Control. That's what it was always about for Corinne Maddox. Not results. Not impact. Not even status. Just control. The ability to hold a room hostage with one sentence. The way she could bend timelines, bury voices, reroute credit, and walk away like it was all just business. She controlled narratives, careers, people, until she tried to control the wrong person, and lost everything, without me ever having to raise my voice, throw a tantrum, or send a threatening email. In the end, I didn't just survive Corinne. I outlived her, in every professional space that mattered. Months passed since the Everlight collapse. Corinne faded further into obscurity, drifting from firm to firm, none of them lasting more than a quarter. Her freelance career coaching page went quiet. Her social posts became sporadic, unfocused. She'd gone from commanding conference rooms to repackaging blog quotes for 7 likes. And I had moved on. But then something poetic happened. Something I didn't plan. Our firm landed a major bid. StrattonLink, a top-tier legacy finance tech giant. Deep pockets, old money, and a massive internal trust issue they couldn't fix. Victor called me into his office with a look on his face I hadn't seen since the Gossamer Ridge hiring call. Elena, he said, they're requesting an embedded team for 6 months. Strategy, retention, restructuring, full access. They want someone who can lead it all. I already knew where this was going. He slid the folder across the desk. They want you. StrattonLink wasn't just a big win. It was the win. Their client loyalty issues had been under scrutiny for years. A successful rehab would cement my reputation permanently. But that wasn't why my stomach flipped when I opened the file. It was the name listed under Internal Audit Review Team. Temporary hire, Maddox, Corinne. I blinked. Victor shrugged. She got in through a staffing agency. They didn't know the history. I stared at the file. This wasn't a trap I'd built. It wasn't a revenge plot. I hadn't chased her. Hadn't emailed anyone. Hadn't whispered a word. But somehow, after everything, she'd ended up right under me again. And this time, I was in charge. I arrived at StrattonLink HQ on a Tuesday. They gave me a glass-walled corner suite and a badge that granted full-floor access. My internal calendar was preloaded with team leads, resource reviews, and 3 performance evaluation meetings, one of which was with temporary audit support, Maddox. I didn't request it. Someone else had. Poetic. When she walked in, her eyes landed on the nameplate on my desk. She froze. Elena. I looked up calmly. Corinne. There was a silence so sharp it nearly cracked the windows. She was dressed in black, again. Neat, professional, but the edges were duller. The sharpness was gone. I didn't know you were here, she said. I nodded. Most people don't. Until it matters. She smiled, tight and bitter. So this is your revenge, huh? No, I said, folding my hands. This is my job. And then I slid the file across the table, just like she once had with my evaluation. Only this time, the file was hers. I didn't fire Corinne. I didn't threaten her. I didn't humiliate her in front of others. I simply conducted the review. She was late on 3 assignments. Her documentation was sloppy. Her feedback loops were poorly structured. Nothing malicious. Just mediocre. Exactly what she'd once accused me of, except now, provably true. I passed it on to the department lead. They thanked me. And removed her from the contract within 48 hours. She was escorted out quietly. No one asked why. Because by now, her name explained itself. That was the last time I saw her. But something shifted in me after that. Not because she was gone, but because I realized I'd done it all without stooping to her level. I never hacked her system. I never screamed in a boardroom. I didn't smear her name. I didn't chase gossip. I just kept building, kept showing up, kept doing the work. And eventually, she buried herself. Today, I lead a cross-continental strategy team for Gossamer Ridge. We consult with legacy firms, startups, and impact organizations across 11 countries. My models are used in 130 companies. I'm not famous. I'm not loud. And I still don't like being the center of attention. But I'm respected. And not because I outsmarted Corinne, but because I outlasted her. So to anyone sitting in a quiet office right now, watching their work disappear because of someone else's ego. To anyone being gaslit, silenced, overlooked. Take note. You don't need to burn the building down to win. You just have to know where the foundation cracks. And then, stand still, and let the collapse come to them.